I'm going to walk you through how to do steps 6 and 7 on the building your prototype project. Before I actually do step 6, which is making your graph and doing little measurements, we're going to look at step 7 first. I believe step 7 should come first before step 6. We need to know the exact radius of the cylinder that we have built. So you have your cylinder, we want to find the radius, which is halfway in that circle. To find the radius, no, you're not going to use a ruler to do that. It's going to be too messy. You actually can use the fact that we know that the circumference is equal to 8 inches because we measured that before we started making the cylinder. I know that the circumference is 8 inches, and I also know that the formula for circumference is 2 pi r. So actually, let's just use some math to find the radius, which is r. All right, so I'm going to plug in my circumference, which is 8, equals 2 pi r, and I'm going to divide both sides by 2 pi to solve for r. R is going to be equal, therefore, to 4 over pi. At this point, I'm going to be using a calculator to figure out what 4 divided by pi is. 4 divided by second, pi is right here, enter. It's about 1.27. So my radius is about 1.27. I need to know my radius before I begin graphing. So what you need is graph paper and a ruler and a pencil to make corrections and make erasions, whatever, to make erase any mistakes you might make, because you might make some, because you want to be very, very precise. So I'm going to go ahead and draw an axis here. Tops on the what? Sorry for that. That's why we need erasers to make erasions. But you know, there you go. Because we want to make some mistakes on here. Next, what you want to do is to now label your axes. Oops. Now you want to make sure you label your axis according to inches. So you could measure, right? But you also can notice that 1 inch is equivalent to about 4 of these little boxes. So what I'm going to do is number this as 1 inch, and then I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. Another 4 boxes is 2 inches, and so forth. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's going to be 3 inches, and 4 inches, and 5. You're going to do the same thing up here as well. Label it according to inches. 2, 3, 4. That's 1. Okay, so now I've labeled my graph here. Now before you actually begin tracing the shape that you cut out and you saved, right, from your lantern that you made, before you do that, you actually have to first graph the radius. That is because we're imagining, and let me just flatten mine for a sec. If I were to flatten it, like so, you're imagining that we're adding in the radius of the cylinder and the shape, because I've got to fold it. You're adding in the radius and then your shape, right? because what's essentially happening is that we're going to rotate around this 360 degrees to get the volume. So what you actually got to do first is graph the radius first. Then you'll trace your shape on top of it. That's what we're doing. Yes, I ruined my shape. You can't do that. So we actually got to measure. So 1.25. I'm going to be utilizing, 1.27, I'm sorry. So 1.27 was the radius that we recorded, and it's right here. We're going to first graph that. So I'm going to be utilizing the fact that I know this is 1.25, 1.50, 1.75, and 2. So basically each of these little cubes is about 0.25. So that means 1.27, this is 1.25, 1.27 is about right here. A little bit above 1.25. So using your ruler, just go ahead and graph that radius. And then I want you guys to label it. So this is the radius of your figure. Now, you're going to take the shape that you saved, and now you're going to trace it on top of the radius line that we just made. And yes, use a pencil, because my pencil kept slipping when I made my shape tracing. There we go. There is my shape trace, an outline. Now what you're going to do is a little bit tedious, but you need at least 7 points labeled on your graph. That means you kind of got to use your decimals, things like that. And you need at least 7 points to get a good representation. If you want a better representation of your graph, use more than 7, please. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to find nice points. Nice points on this graph are points that end up on a corner. I see one right here that looks like it's on the corner, and it's okay to kind of estimate these. I'm going to start right there. This point right here, this is 0.25, 0.50. So my x is 0.50. My y, this is a 2.25, 0.50, 0.75. This ends up being 2.75. See how I just did my counts, and I'm counting because every square here has a length of 0.25 of an inch, so it makes it easier. And I chose a nice point. I'm going to find another nice point. I'm hoping another point lands on the corner. And if yours doesn't land on the corner, that's okay. I found another one. So mine basically just has around 2 points. Ooh, this one's very nice. It's at x equals 4 and at 1.50, about there. Okay, now let's choose another point. Okay, so I think those were all of my nice points. So I'm going to go ahead and choose good points that represent the curvature of my graph. I'm going to choose this point now. This point looks to be at about 2.50. And the y seems to be at about 2 point something. I know it's less than 2.25. I'm going to say this is about 2.10 of an inch. So see, it's okay if you guesstimate, but you got to be approximate. Oh, actually, look, take a look. I found another corner point. Let me try to zoom in so you guys can see how I'm choosing these points. I found a nice little other corner point that I haven't noticed before. These points are good points. So that's about 1.50 of an inch, and it's at 2.75. Well, that's curious. It's aligned to this one right here. All right, so I have a total of 4 points. I have to keep going until I have 7, right? That's the step process here. Keep going, and then I'm going to choose right here at 3.50. When x equals 3.50, the y looks like it's at, I don't know, like 2.23 of an inch. Maybe let's choose at 2. When x equals 2, my y seems to be at about 2.25 and plus half. I know half of 25 is about 12. 37, 2.37. Where am I at? 2 point. Yeah, 2.37. Just making sure that it's making sense with the points I have around there. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I need at least one more point. And I'm going to choose a point around here. Because if I don't demonstrate this point, then my graph can get wonky. So let's go ahead and just choose this point right here. So this is at around. Okay, I'm actually not going to choose that point. And you can see why I'm making that choice, because I notice it's not on, you know, a nice X value. So I'm going to move on. Let's actually choose this point right here, which is 1.25. Right here, yeah, see that? This is how I'm making my choices. And this seems to be a little above 2.75, so I'm going to call that, I don't know, 2.80. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There we go. I got my 7 points. With these 7 points, I can create a function. Not really a precise function, but an approximation of what this function should be. So this is how you do the measurement portion. Please make sure that you attempt this on your own before you ask me for help.